Welcome to My Favorite CX, a podcast that celebrates exceptional customer experiences. To listen to today's, please choose from one of the following options.
Welcome to My Favorite Customer Experience. I'm Chris from Holt CX Consultancy, and I'm joined today by Garry Gormley. Garry, welcome.
Hey folks. Hello, thank you for having me, Chris.
For those that don't know Garry made the move from being an in-house resource within customer experience at the likes of Bupa and Swinton to set up his own contact center consultancy just over 6 years ago. In addition to offering consultancy and leadership training, FAB also has an outsourcing offering. And if Garry wasn't busy enough, then he also co-founded HPC, High Performing Culture, in 2023 and started 2025 by joining CloudAxe as a non-executive director. Garry, that is quite a resume. And why don't you put it in your own words of what is it you do?
Yeah, I mean, you said it like that, it makes you sound like jack of all trades, master of none. Maybe that's true, But yeah, I have spent nearly 20-ish years. So I started in contact centers back in 2023. So it's actually over 22 years that I've been in the contact center space. And I started life out as a contact center agent. I was selling insurance for a living, and it was probably supposed to be a stopgap. And I think this is probably true of a lot of people that enter into the contact center space thinking, oh yeah, I'll just do with this for maybe 6 months, 12 months. And then 22 years later, I'm deeper in it than I ever have been. So yeah, I set up FAB, which is forensic about business for those that would like to know. Set that up in 2019, having done a load of stuff in operations, customer experience, sales, customer service. And I originally set it up with the intention of it to be almost like a sales capability business for capability and people optimization. And it kind of grew arms and legs, and you get involved in all sorts of other stuff. And yeah, so now it includes customer experience, it includes analytics. So Fab Analytics is part of that, understanding how we delve into the depths of data to improve process. There's outsourcing attached to it. So we do all sorts of stuff in the L&D space, so customer service training, sales training, leadership development, and yeah, it keeps me busy. And the CloudAxe stuff is something that I've started quite recently. To be fair, it was a chance meeting with a young entrepreneur in Manchester who was starting their lives out in the AI voice calling space, and I was like, you guys are onto something here. I'm sure AI is a thing. So I kind of started to do some more work with them, and naturally it became a good fit to say, right, I can help you in more than being just a soundboard. So I joined that in January this year, and they've got their launch event in February. In fact, in not long at all. So yeah, it should be it's interesting times, Chris, but it's like sleep when you're dead, so they say.
And I'm also a 2003 alumni. So I started in technology in telecoms in 2003. For me, it was a placement year on an aerospace degree. And like you, I kind of fell into it. And apart from 10 years ago, when I dabbled with the idea of setting up a burger shop or a deli or something,
Random.
I was going through a change in circumstances. And I was like, I could do this now. And then reality kicked in of like, no, I like what I do. I'm quite good at what I do. So, I'm now here again, 22 years.
Yeah. To be fair, I thought the world was out to get me when I first started up, because there was like this small thing called Brexit that we had to contend with. And then, as if that wasn't a challenge enough, somebody sent a global pandemic to my front door. So I was like, oh, great, what am I supposed to do now? Which is how the contact center network was born, actually. It was like, idle hands are the devil's work. So I was like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? And then set up a contact center network community, and that's now like 5 years old. So yes, things stick around.
I think
Thankfully,
it's
COVID didn't, or as in the same way it didn't.
yeah, I think that certainly changed ways of working for me as well. You suddenly become more more aware of working for global. I was at Ring Central at the time, and I was part of a global team, but because of time zones and being on the road, I couldn't necessarily contribute. And then when you're all locked away in your houses, you can suddenly get involved with more stuff. And actually,
Yeah.
it turned into a huge change in my career path as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I was just in the process of setting up a face-to-face networking group as well called Fab Networking, as if that wasn't as bad a title. I was like, okay, so we'll do some face-to-face networking, and then COVID happened. So I was like, well, what can I do with all this now? So I just plowed my time into building an online community that can kind of help bring people together, because everybody was really struggling at the time. They were like, what do we do for tech? What do we do for people? What do we do for training? What do we do for resources? How do we bring people together? And it was like, there was a strong need to just build a little bit of a community at that time. So I remember like Martin Teasdale, Lee Horton, Mike Smith were my first guests, as I seem to recall. And yeah, it went from there. We've literally just done the last one with Ben Booth and Jimmy Hosang, where we were talking about, is CCAS dying as conversational AI rises? And it was like Rocky Four. It was a brilliant podcast, webinar at least.
Who won on points on that one?
You know what? It was interesting because they obviously set the stall out. So there was the champion of CCAS, which was Ben Booth, and the champion of conversation AI, which was Jimmy Hoaxang. And strangely, Jimmy had come full circle by the end of it, and he was champion in CCAS.
And as someone with a foot in both camps, obviously the CloudAxe venture is very new for you. Tell us a bit about what CloudAxe does and your involvement.
So I picked up Ollie as a young entrepreneur back in October, and I was just listening to the passion that he had for his business, and his mantra was never wait on hold again, never have your customers waiting on hold again. And obviously, my vision and mission for Fab is to change the perception of customers about contact centers by delivering awesome customer and employee experiences. So it aligned quite nicely. And I was like, there is some work that we can do here. So I got to understand his business in a little bit more detail, and what he was trying to do, and the mission and the vision. And I was like, right, I'd like to help you guys. And actually, I think you could complement the Fab side of my business as much as I can help with your business. Because obviously, challenges that we've got in the contact center is trying to find new ways to manage demand, trying to improve the customer experience, trying to smooth out the customer journeys. And one of the ways that we can do that is through creating new channels or new ways to help manage customer demand. So what they're doing is really interesting. Is they're using conversational AI, and they're using large language models and pulling all that together to present to a customer a virtual agent that can manage some of that demand. So either cope with some of the transactions that you're doing, or actually help act as an internal voice AI knowledge base that your contact center agent can ring up if they need some help. So we all know it's a busy old time in the contact center, and you're not always accessible as the manager, the leader, or coach isn't always on hand. So actually, wouldn't it be great if you could just ring the knowledge base and have a conversation with them about the problem that you've got, rather than trying to scour your knowledge base, finding the right answer? So we're working on an internal AI assistance as well as external facing voice AI solutions that can help deflect demand. So it dovetails nicely in with what Fab does and what we're trying to do versus what they've got as a standalone product. So it's interesting to see what happens.
And interesting from the perspective of looking at the employee and that agent experience as well. There are a number of products providing agent assistance and Copilot that will surface knowledge, but not in that audible way of
Yeah.
it's a completely different way of thinking about it, of like, yeah, if you're already on a voice call, why not put the customer on hold and speak to,
100%.
speak what you need rather than type stuff away,
Yeah.
which is a different spin.
You know, I used to have it when I was back in PAYE land. We used to have a support line that you could ring and there'd be a real agent at the end of it. But obviously, that comes at a cost because you've got resource that you're taking away from your customers to ring. So the idea and the inspiration with it when I was chatting to Ollie was to say, right, why don't we try and, because we've got to build a knowledge base for customers anyway in order for this product to work. So why don't you turn that internal knowledge base into something that an agent could get help with and could get real-time support with, whether that's, should I be logging this as a complaint, or I've got a vulnerable customer on the line, can I just check what the triggers are, or what the responses should be for these types of customers? So it can act as a very real-time support to an agent who might be in a little bit of distress, or just might be struggling and can't get somebody on Teams, or can't get somebody who's a mentor, or can't find a manager to ask a question about. So we've built a series of like customer service ones, sales AI assistants, and then generally knowledge that you can personalize to your own specific product or industry. So it becomes very bespoke to them. So it's interesting. It'll be good to see it unfold, and I'm really excited to see what they do at the launch event. But it's nice to be part of that new entrepreneurial spirit, and see a little bit of me in them, I suppose. Is maybe I'm going through a midlife crisis. I don't know.
No, I can totally get that. I've just started offering mentoring services, and it is a very similar thing. Of I started, well, we've talked about how old we are already, but 22 years ago, and throughout my career, there have been people that I've been able to call upon for mentorship, either on technical guidance or helping smooth out the rough edges, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, when you see it's not even the next generation, depressingly, it's about the next generation coming through. It's great to be able to work with them and see, they see the world very differently. I've got a son a similar kind of age, and the way they experience the world as customers, and consequently employees soon, is very different.
Yeah, and I feel majorly depressed with every meeting I have with them, because I am literally the oldest person around the table when we're having a conversation. So it just reminds you of how you spent your misspent youth, maybe is what I'm bringing up to there.
So what we'll do is we'll place our listeners on hold, or our viewers as well, if you're tuning in on YouTube. And when we come back, we'll ask you about your recent or historical favorite customer experience.
Your current wait time is 72 minutes. To hear options to be connected to a favorite customer agent sooner, please dial 9 on your keypad now.
Welcome back to my favorite customer experience. My guest this week is Garry Gormley of FAB Solutions and recently of CloudAxe. Garry, why don't you tell us about a favorite customer experience?
You know what? It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you're asked that question, it's more of a taxing question than going the other way. So if you're asking me, think of all your bad experiences, there's loads that spring to mind. In fact, there's one that I'm going through at the moment, wrestling with a certain company about my dad's recliner chair that they won't fix, and they shall remain nameless. But when I think about positive customer experiences, you really have to scratch your head to try and think about it. And I think the one that probably springs to mind most recently is more, and it's strange that this one comes to mind because these are usually more negative ones. But I had a really challenging issue with my utility bills. They were all over the show. They were like literally, I was like, where is my energy consumption going, and why is my energy bill going through the roof? Other than the fact that we were in an energy crisis, it was inordinately higher than what it should have been, with me being somebody in a one person in a 2 bedroom flat, thinking, surely I shouldn't be using this much electric. And my flat is electric only, so it's more expensive anyway. But I was trying to work it out, and I was like, where do I start here? So I contacted my energy company, which was Scottish Power. And I've had lots of challenges previously with various different energy companies, and I was chatting to Scottish Power, who are actually their whole time is probably something that maybe the CloudX guys could help with, but there was a long wait time. But you know what? I put that down to the fact that they're an energy company and everybody's ringing and it's going to be a struggle. But what made the difference is when I got through, they were actually really helpful in trying to identify and work out where some of the problems were. And they were like, well, have you tried this um, source here? Have you tried switching this bit off? And they were giving some really helpful guidance and support around how they could try and help me identify it and sort out where this issue came from. And my flat at the time when I called up probably about 6 months ago wasn't in the same space for like smart meters, and they were like, well, let's just check if you're now eligible. And they were eligible, and they were able to sort out an appointment to come through and get a new smart meter installed, which at first I was like, really don't want to know how much energy I'm using on a real-time basis. Now I am absolutely obsessed with my smart meter. It's like literally whenever I switch something on, I'm like, let me just check how that's changed now. So I can really work out with their help, I suppose, to kind of try and think about how I was isolating the switch. I've now realized I've probably got a boiler that needs replacing as a result. And I'm like, do I really want to replace my boiler? So I've now got to kind of work out how to sort that. But the bit that I suppose resonated in that customer experience wasn't necessarily how I had to wait to get through, but it was the fact that the person that was there at the end of it was actually hugely helpful, and went out of their way to try and help me get a resolution that's going to help me think about where that consumption is coming from, for the longer term, rather than just trying to fix the immediate issue. So whilst it was born from a place of frustration, and I was thinking it must be Scottish Power's fault that I am consuming so much electric. They must be overcharging me in some way. It went from well, maybe it's not Scottish Power, and maybe it's something in the flat that's driving that. And yeah, it took a few back and forths to sort, but I think ultimately the ownership that they demonstrated, the willingness to try and help me solve the problem, and the fact that they then helped me get access to a smart meter probably sooner than maybe I would have done had I not contacted them, um, gave me hope that there is hope for the energy sector, because I think we've kind of written them off a little bit. And yes, there are still some that have still we're experiencing a high number of calls still. And I think that's when that's been the norm for 3 years, you kind of need to go back and review your capacity plans and your shrinkage and all of your operational metrics, because it can't be the same for 3 years running. But I think what it showed from my point of view is that individuals in businesses make a difference. And it might be that it's more of a systemic issue sometimes with wait times and stuff. But actually, once you get through to somebody and they take ownership, they take action, and they go that extra mile, it can restore a little bit of faith in a sector that I think has taken a beating for certainly 3 years, if not a little bit more.
And it sounded like you had a low bar in terms of expectation. You're like, oh, I'm having to call my utility company. It's going to be painful. It's going to take a while. As you say, 3 years of experiencing high call volumes. No, that's just call volumes, realistically.
That's now just your demand.
Yeah. That is not a peak at that point. That's just But I think, sorry, for those listening on audio, I've just been drawing flat line graphs in my hands. So apologies. Tune in on YouTube to see all the puppet show stuff going on as well. But I think the fact that they've empowered their individuals so that when you do get through, you get to a resolution makes a massive difference, because it means your first time contact rate is going to be good for Scottish Power, and you walk away satisfied as a customer. You're not having to call back, and now you're gaming the system and seeing how you can, do I need that third cup of tea this morning, or can
Oh
I
yeah,
just have
I
a
mean
glass of water?
every light in the house is now switched off if it doesn't need to be on, because I'm like, I'm watching it, I'm watching that dial.
Our son moved out a couple of months back, and they've got a smart meter. And now that he's paying the bill, he was saying to his flatmate, no, we're turning this stuff off at this time. And he wondered why we would do all of that in the past. It's like, oh, that's how you run a house now, is you turn as much stuff off. I mean, I put in electric floors or electric underheating floors a few years ago before the energy crisis. And it's both a lovely feeling, but also
I mean, Chris, have you heard
when
of
it's
these things called slippers?
well,
They just
exactly. It
slide
would
on
have
the end
saved
of
me
your
a lot
feet
of
and keep
money.
you warm.
It would have saved me a lot of money. But yeah, the moment it goes below a certain like temperature, we're looking at going, oh, we've already spent £10 and it's 7 o'clock in the morning. You're like, yeah,
You know what?
not good.
As you can see in my flat, for those that are watching this, it's full of like brick walls and stuff. So trying to keep this place heated and insulated, I mean, it's like living in an igloo sometimes. It's so cold. And I've learned that you can wear more layers. Is I can wear more layers, or I can pay more for electric. Tough decision. So yeah, I tend to just layer up and get the blankets out before I start putting on the heating. Unless the missus is around, in which case she's like, "Put the heating on, you stingy so and so." Gotta try.
Yeah, I
So it's
must admit, I've slowly embraced like jumpers and things over the years. Like, we don't need to go up an extra degree. What's the smart meter telling us?
yeah. So you've got to get your priorities right when it comes to it's climate change, but it's the saving in the pocket.
So, just a couple of questions about the experience. So, it sounds like it was a positive one. How did it make you feel?
Do you know what? Whilst it didn't directly solve my issue in that I've got a massive bill of electric, it helps me, I suppose, gain some clarity in that there is a problem outside of your electric bill. There is a problem with some sort of appliance that you need to fix. So it gave me closure, in a certain respect. And I suppose it did kind of restore a little bit of faith in that some people, if you ask, they're more than happy to help.
And just so people know where to find you, especially if you're a boiler engineer and have listened
Yeah.
to this, and are in the Manchester area, where can people find you, Gary?
So I am in the Manchester area, but I do for work and for ever who wants to pay me will travel outside of the M60 ring road. But most people, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But most people can find me and connect with me nice and easily through LinkedIn. I'm generally hanging out on that as a social medium of choice. So they can head across to my LinkedIn page and see what I'm about, see what kind of we're doing differently. Maybe you need to invest in a new chair as well, because this one seems to be dipping all the way down. But yeah, you can find me through that, or you can find me on www.fabsolutions.co.uk, and check out the webpage and see if there's anything of interest that hangs around there.
And if you haven't signed up to the Contact Center Network, that's also well worth a follow. Regular webinars now,
Regular webinars,
or
monthly
LinkedIn
webinars,
Live.
LinkedIn Lives. We've got the newsletter as well. You can sign up on the newsletter, the Contact Center Network newsletter. And that's my new team member, Kate Elias, is the proud champion of that. So she's doing a good job drumming up some interest in that. And the idea behind that newsletter is very similar to yourself, Chris, is just sharing useful stuff from around the industry. So it's not like a fab in your face. It's what can we add value and how can we add value by connecting other people up to other points of interest.
Brilliant. Well, Garry, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you for listening or watching this week's My Favorite Customer Experience.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you for listening to My Favorite CX. Your listenership is important to us. On your keypad, please press a number between 1 and 5 to rank how much you've enjoyed your experience.